This is Dahlia.
This is Wes Blaze.
And you're listening to Ya Tunes Radio, where we bring you biblically sound music.
God bless, son. Where'd you find this?
Shalom from under the seven domes. The truth's not like anything that I've ever known. We living in a room with some roofs and a tomb, and the floor so flat you can see it with the level on. Cold life, it's a cold flat world. Cold light coming from the moon. Cold heart, but I listen for the voice of the bride and the voice of the bridegroom. Make your brain go boom, that's an onomatopoeia. Praise Yahweh, the waters on the Rakia. Mama Mia, my Messiah was missing for 3 Dias, but he came back resurrected with the key to free us. And I'm blessed, so I bless him, and his word is something you can invest in. Shalom from under the seven domes. The truth's not like anything that I've ever known. We living in a room with some roofs and a tomb, and the floor so flat you can see it with the level on. Cold life, it's a cold flat world with the cold light coming from the moon. Cold heart, but I listen for the voice of the bride and the voice of the bridegroom. He said the earth takes shape like clay to the seal when it's pressed in. Heaven stretched out like a tent to rest in. The sky is the limit. The sky is the limit. Yeah, the sky is the limit. Shalom from under the seven domes.
Hello again. My name is Saul Paul, and welcome to Remnant Radio Ministries. I think I'm getting better at the controls on this video. So I'm wanted to welcome you again. You're very welcome to this channel. Wanted to thank Wes Blaze Music and Dahlia for that video again. Great ministry, and I will link to that in the description. All right. And today we're going to have probably a longer video. I wanted to share briefly a scripture as I'm thinking about this ministry a little bit, and some of the reasons why I've started it. And I'm back in Romans 1, and by the way, I'm using NKJV for a lot of the biblical texts. That's the version that I've just gotten used to recently, and I do a lot of color coding in my Bible. I like to be able to quickly spot words that are either blessings, which I tend to color in yellow, or curses, which I tend to color in blue, or things that we should consider and be mindful of, which I color in that purple color. So just reading the first few verses from Romans 1, starting in verse 18, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man, in birds and four-footed animals and creeping things." And it goes on to talk about how God gave them over to their uncleanness and the lust of their hearts, the dishonor of their bodies, etc., which of course leads to destruction. So part of the reason I bring that up, there are those who know what this world is. There are those who are suppressing the truth. And because of that, there are those who are deceived. And so part of what I'm trying to do with this channel is really to bring about some of these deceptions into the open so that we can have all the information that we need at our disposal to make the right decisions. All right, so having said all that, I'd like to get back into the article that I had created and posted. And one of the things that I wanted to just point out is I do have a Substack channel, Remnant Radio. Remnant-radio.com is the main website, and from there you can access a couple of different socials at the bottom. One of them is the Substack, one of them is YouTube, one of them is my TikTok channel as well. And TikTok I'm going to try to use for smaller format, shorter format snippets, pretty much from these longer form, which I'm going to post to YouTube recordings. The other thing is just in terms of the articles, you'll see them both in the Substack as well as on the actual Remnant Radio channel itself. And so you can follow along in either of those two. So looking from the website, here is the second area that I wanted to focus on around this topic, again, of the Above the Dome series, which is that we live in a biblical cosmological system. And we're going to be talking today about an interview and actually kind of a bit of a debate between a few different participants. I had trouble finding and locating this individual who is Dr. Matthew. Let's call him Dr. Matthew. He is a physicist and has some expertise in thermodynamics and fluid mechanics. And then the guy who was on the podcast some years back and I was listening to, who, kind of woke me up, was this guy named David Weiss. I guess he goes now by Flat Earth Dave. And there's another gentleman named Angel, who are on the Advocates for Biblical Cosmology side, and then the moderator who's hosting the conversation. So what I'd like to do today is go through a analysis of the conversation. Obviously, I'm going to come from the pro-biblical cosmological view, but I also wanted to get into some of the video topics and show some snippets from that video. Most likely, there's going to be ads that come up, so I'm probably going to have to edit some of this video out, as YouTube is just going to serve up some ads as I go into different parts of the video. Okay, so starting off, flat Earth basics, and we've talked about some of this up to this point already, but the Earth is a stationary, flat, topographical plane, horizontally level, and it's surrounded by something we call the shoreline, which is the Antarctic Circle, which is where Antarctica is. And there's basically a large wall of ice around it. I've seen pictures of that, some places as high as 200 feet or more. We have in the system, we're covered by a firmament, which is an invisible dome-like structure. It's actually probably a transparent dome-like structure. And then there are celestial bodies that rotate above clockwise around Polaris, not around the sun. The anti-heliocentric claims the globe model violates natural law. The gravity is a belief system not proven, and electrostatics is stronger and is testable. Refraction is overused to explain anomalies, and satellites, curvature, spinning Earth, and the vastness of space are unverified assumptions. Okay, so getting into some of the scientific arguments and experiments, the Antarctic Treaty is a barrier to prevent exploration south of or beyond the 60-degree south latitude. The region is heavily guarded by global powers and allegedly to obscure outer Earth or the edge. Now, in terms of Antarctic Treaty, let me see. I think around minute 7 is where they were talking about this. So let me go ahead and find minute 7 in the video.
Guard Antarctica. They don't allow anybody unsupervised, without prior permission, to go beyond that 60 degrees south. location. So there it is.
But people do go to Antarctica.
Absolutely.
Okay. So they've acquired permission to go there.
Yeah, but there's no free and independent exploration of the outer South.
Okay. All right. I am somewhat familiar with the Antarctic Treaty. It was signed by even the Soviet Union back, I believe, the Soviet Union and the United States, they all agreed on that treaty back in, was it the 50s or the 60s?
Late 50s, right?
Okay. Okay, so let's go back to the...
Okay, so I think I'm going to edit some of that out, but let's go ahead back into the article here. So yeah, the Antarctic Treaty is in place between a number of countries to prevent exploration south. The Horizon and Curvature Challenge. So this is a big one. Boats and buildings allegedly visible beyond the calculated curvature limits. So I wanted to show there is something called the Earth Curve Calculator. And if you go in here and assume you can just Google Earth Curve Calculator and it'll pop up. This one is off of GitHub. And if you go to a height of 6 feet, let's say you're a man 6 feet tall, and you're looking out at a distance of 3 miles, it shows that your horizon is approximately 3 miles from where you're standing, and that the hidden height is at 0. What that means is you're looking right at the horizon. Now, if we were to extend this out to 30 miles and then hit calculate, what you'll notice is that your horizon distance is still 3 miles, but your target hidden height has now increased to 486 feet. So you can see why that is. As you're looking out, things will drop off. There will be a bulge in between you and the target. So now your target is 486 feet below the curve. If we go out a whole, add another 0 and hit that, we're now looking at a 58,741 foot drop off behind the curve. So the further you go, the more curvature should be there. But I think the key thing again is that if you're 6 feet tall and you're looking out over the water, you should only see about 3 miles until things start to drop off beyond or underneath the curve of the earth/water. Let's say you're looking out on a relatively flat surface. Okay, so when we're seeing oil rigs at 9 to 10 miles, they should be 59 feet below the curve from an observer height of 1 to 8 feet, yet are visible with the horizon behind them. We've seen testing from lakes where it was frozen over and the light is visible at 8 miles from 6 inches above the surface, which is impossible under curvature math. And then there's this one here. The entire skyline is visible when it should be hidden beneath 1,700 feet of curve with the Chicago skyline. This was reported some years back. And the anchor, I believe, who's a meteorologist, was saying that this was due to refraction or a mirage. In this case, he said it was a mirage. And as we can zoom in, the angular momentum of the eye is obviously lower than the angular, the angular resolution of the eye is lower than the angular resolution of, it's less than that of the camera. So the camera with the current modern optics is able to zoom into something that our eyes cannot. And then there's also this one video evidence of a mountain that appears 175 miles away twice a year. So it's supposed to be refraction, perhaps, that is explaining this in the modern physics description of it, but clearly it's not, right? It's going to be falling way below the curvature. So let's go ahead and find some of these on the video.
So, and if I sat down, I'm now no longer 6 feet tall. That horizon's going to come even closer to me because I'm lower.
Correct. Your perspective is different. Yeah.
So we're going to show you some observations that require magical refraction. So out here, there's no boat. You can't see a boat. So look carefully. Ready? So as we zoom in, we're increasing the angular size. So we're making our aperture bigger and bigger and bigger. And as we do, all of a sudden you see, oh, look, there is a boat there. Now my finger can't hide that whole boat. But if my finger was a wave in the foreground, as I zoom out, my finger is going to hide the whole boat. Okay? And these little waves in the foreground, the boat looks like it's going over the curvature. But you can agree that boat's not going over curvature. it's going out of our ability to see it. It's going out of our angular resolution limits.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
If it was behind a physical curve, we couldn't zoom in on it. No, but even if we had the Hubble telescope.
Well, there are other elements at play here, such as the refraction, but yes, I would agree that. How far is that boat away? Is that?
We don't know. We don't know on that one, but we do have other ones where. Angel, are you able to share images well, or I can share them and you can talk about them?
Yeah, I mean, I can share my own observation that I did. I've got the video ready. I can share it.
Yeah, some numbers would be good if we could know how far away that particular object is. Then we could calculate whether we can actually see it. Then accounting for refraction.
Let Angel show you this demonstration, then I'll show you something that we know.
Yeah, I'm going to go forward here and pick a few things out further into the conversation. So the horizon being further out, I think, is at minute 15. Let's go ahead and look at that real quick.
Doesn't seem like far, 9.4 miles away, but according to the Earth curve calculator, this platform should be hidden by 59 feet of curvature from that elevation. Not only can we see all of the water leading up to it, we can see the horizon far behind it. We can see the horizon far behind it. Let me show you another video of this. So this horizon is far beyond the platforms.
Okay.
So right here, the water would need to be refracting up almost 60 feet. Out here, it has to refract up maybe hundreds of feet for us to be able to see it. But the horizon is far miles beyond the horizon, beyond the platform, which would be impossible on a ball.
Okay, so you're saying that the camera that took that picture was 1 foot off the water?
Correct.
So the first one was 1, this one's 8 foot, and I can actually show you the video of that confirming it, but yeah.
Oh, okay, so
All right, so this conversation continues. I'm going to look for the one that has the ice laser on it. Let's see if we can find that.
Ice, and in the video you can see that he dug down, shows you where the ice is, so we're not on top of any snow or anything. And then he put these lights at 8 miles, 7 miles, 6 miles, and 5 miles. Now that doesn't seem far, but at 6 miles away, the horizon should be 0.88 miles away, less than a mile away. That's the Earth curve calculator, and we're looking on ice.
Sorry, at 8 miles, is that right on the surface of the water?
It's right on the ice.
Oh, I see.
And I think these are 6 inches off the ice, right? But again, you have to watch the video. But again, 6 inches a foot isn't going to make a difference. Watch. At 8 miles, including an absurd amount of refraction, 30 feet, 22 feet, 15, and 9 feet behind the curve of the Earth. Remember? Mm-hmm. You can't see my mouth because it's behind the curve of the Earth.
Yes.
Okay? So if we look at it, we have two options. We got the camera on the ice, and it's looking at all of these things across the level ice. That's option number one. Option number two is the camera 6 inches off the ice at 0.88 miles away is the tangent of the Earth. It's skimming across the tangent, and all of these at nighttime with no humidity are refracting up and stopping exactly at that tangent line. None of them are going above. None of them are going below. They're just magically stopping at that tangent line. Option A, flat Earth. Option B, heliocentric religion.
Yeah, the only
Right. So clearly, when you place a laser at 6 inches above the ice on both sides of a 8-mile delta, and it's frozen and there's no humidity, and refraction is an unlikely candidate for any explanation, it would be impossible for that to occur. Again, the geometry of a sphere, given the radius and the numbers that we've been talking about, it would not allow that that to happen. Let's go ahead and look even further away. So Mount, I think it's called Canigou, around 24 here. Let's see and discuss that.
So
Okay.
here's a spot from Alusia, France, and it's a famous spot because twice a year you can see Mount Canigou, but Mount Canigou is 175 miles away. And at 175 miles from this altitude, which I don't know off the top of my head, but we can look it up, the top of Mount Canigou should be over a half a mile below. You paying attention, Matthew?
Yeah, I'm listening and calculating as you speak.
The top of Mount Canigou, well, you don't know the elevation height, so you can't calculate.
Okay.
The top of Mount Canigou should be a half a mile, and almost every day of the year you can't see it. Earth curve, right? But twice a year, the sun lines up with the viewer in its migration between the tropics. And when it goes beyond Mount Canigou, you can see it. And right there, the top of Mount Canigou and the whole mountain is seen. The top should be over a half a mile below the curve. Let me just jump forward a little bit. The globe explanation here is, that mountain is over the curve, right? And the sun is also has also set. So the sun has also set, but it's refracting up, and Mount Canigou is also refracting up and blocking the refracted sun.
Well, why don't you try infrared photography? That way you could, you should be able, with infrared, if Mount Canigou is actually visible, then you don't have to wait twice a year. You could use infrared and you should be able to see it anytime, I think.
That actually is a great idea. That is a great idea.
Yeah, so I know we've seen infrared shots that are further as well. But that is kind of the extent of what I wanted to show with some of those. I think Chicago is at minute 31, so let me go ahead and forward a little bit more.
Chicago skyline across Lake Michigan. This is 57 miles in distance away from the observer. Now, this was taken at Grandmere State Park across to Lake Michigan. They're both elevated. If you calculate so the observer height is 600 feet above sea level, and Chicago skyline, the base, is 577 feet above sea level. So you minus that to get the actual height above sea level, which is 23 feet. And then you add 6 foot for the camera height and you get 29 feet. Now, at this distance, there should be over 1,600 feet of curvature. Now, that top building there, the tallest one, Willis Tower, that's only 1,450 feet high. So the top of that building, tallest one that you're seeing there, should also be below the curve on this observation.
What is the observer height here?
When you do the calculation above sea level, it's 29 feet.
That's not a sea. Isn't that a lake?
What's the calculation above? How high are they above the lake?
Yes, that's what I need to know.
Because sea level doesn't matter, and a lot of Globers don't realize that.
Yeah.
Do you know, Angel? Is it 8 feet or something, or?
Well, his observation height was 600 feet above sea level, but the other side of the lake is also elevated 577 feet above sea level. So that's why you'd have to minus it to get the height above sea level.
All right, let's assume he's 8 feet above the lake.
No, he's 29 feet, I think, right?
Oh, okay, that's fair enough.
29 feet, yeah.
So the hidden height should be 1,700 feet.
There you go. The hidden height should be 1,700 feet, but we can see not only the top of the building, but we can see all the way to the bottom of the building. So there's actually nothing hidden behind the curve as a result of there not being a curve. I believe the mirage comment was made around minute 34 because that, again, this is just how the descriptions are made.
American news, and they were telling people that was a mirage that was refracting above.
A mirage would have to be upside down.
Welcome.
Thank you.
How could that mirage?
Exactly. So it's not a mirage. The explanation, the official explanation that was used doesn't make any sense. Refraction can't explain it. So there really just isn't an explanation that makes any sense. So let's go ahead and move on from this topic and jump back into, okay, well, actually here we're talking about refraction being debunked. So claimed as the only savior of globe inconsistencies, rebuttals, the horizontal view over the Earth has no density gradient. Crepuscular rays go straight. There's no observable bending. So when you've seen photos of the sun when it's on a partly cloudy day or a mostly cloudy day, but the sun is kind of creeping through, you'll actually notice how the sun rays are coming out at angles. And that implies a close and local sun, unless the clouds are somehow refracting sunlight. And what you end up with is if the sun were 93 million miles away, all the rays would come in parallel to the ground. It would look like it was raining sun rays, but it's actually close and local. So you see it more like a triangle or a pyramid shape. Okay, so yeah, and the point, refraction can't raise full images over 7,000 feet at 120 plus miles. So it's the entire image that's being raised if that were the case, and just to the right observation height of the viewer randomly or not. Okay, then we get into aviation and flight path challenges. Flat Earth observations are pilots don't nose down for curvature. We talked about that in the last video. Fly level using attitude indicators, gyroscopes. Long haul flights show unchanging star positions. That's an interesting one because the star should be coming up as you're nosing down and going over the curve as the Earth is spinning that way. Flight simulators, planes without autopilot gain altitude on a globe without correction, and the flight from the North Pole to the equator. Yeah, this is the one where we're talking about if you take off from one area on the globe and the globe is spinning, you would have to somehow catch up with the spin or the rotation of the Earth as you're going southbound. And at the equator, it's rotating at 1,000 miles an hour, so it would be impossible to land on. I don't know if there's any particular video clips that I wanted to really show there. There's a discussion on some of this here. Let me go ahead to minute 43 and 45.
Maintain altitude, and they are traveling at relatively high speeds, 600 miles per hour.
Yeah, right in there.
So the navigation system of the plane would have to follow the curvature of the Earth.
Yes.
Otherwise it would continue straight out into, well, space, right?
Can I show? I've got my my flight simulator. If you want to see it, I can show you that real quick.
Yeah, sure. That's interesting stuff.
Okay, so in reality, I've debated many pilots. They all admit they don't need to nose down in reality. Actually, I debated a pilot the other day. He was really interested and, was pretty much getting flat smack left, right, and center. He had to rethink his whole world. But yeah, this is a globe. This is the actual dimensions of the globe. And if I start the flight, it's going to take off, and it's got the attitude indicator here, which maintains rigidity in space. Now, as the plane flies, I'm just going to speed it up a bit. You're going to notice that because it's curving down and away from the plane's just going to keep gaining altitude on the top.
The Earth is curving down and away.
Yeah, the Earth is curving down and away from the plane. Now, if I just leave it in straight and level flight, this is how the plane flies in reality. It doesn't nose down. But because it's not nosing down on a tangent, it's going to end up in space eventually. It's going to be just gaining altitude into infinity.
Well, I don't think it has to have enough thrust and energy to get up there. I don't know if a plane, but then again, gravity is getting weaker the higher it goes, so it would require less thrust.
No, so gravity would have to pull only the nose of the plane down, though. It'd have to be selective in this case. Also,
but don't the airplane navigate, like most pilots do not fly by stick over the course of their flight path. If they're flying from Miami to Rome, they're not actually flying across the Atlantic by stick. They're using the autopilot system. Wouldn't the autopilot system simply correct for the altitude, meaning that every minute the Earth is falling away, but wouldn't the autopilot system just simply correct the altitude to keep the plane at the exact same altitude that it needs to be? That makes sense.
It does, but over a flat Earth, because what happens is this attitude indicator has a gyroscope in it, which maintains rigidity in space. And if the plane was following
a gyroscope,
if the plane was actually following a curve, as you can see now that I'm nosing down, it's changing. It's showing a nose down in the attitude indicator on the left there. And as you fly, if I've debated a pilot, right, who flew 4,800 miles with the nose up, and we've got pitch data to support this. The plane doesn't nose down in reality.
I think that's the main issue, right? We have gyroscopes. We can actually measure the attitude of the plane as it's flying over long distances. It never actually noses down, which proves it's never actually following a curve, which is why it's provably flat. Another proof. All right, let's continue along with some of these others. All right, space and pressure arguments. Atmospheric pressure versus vacuum. Earth's pressurized atmosphere next to the vacuum of space defies the second law of thermodynamics. That's what I was saying earlier. You cannot have a pressurized system next to an infinite vacuum. And there's no lab experiment to demonstrate pressure next to a vacuum without a barrier. So that barrier is in our Bible. It's called the firmament. there's gas in let's say there's gas in a car that disperses when the windows are open, and the outside there's obviously at the same pressure, you would have to have a barrier to prevent the gas from equalizing. Let's see if there's let's talk about the vacuum of space at minute 54. Let's take a look at that.
Gravity, and it goes up and away from gravity right here on Earth. But we're told up in, at that, the gas gets thinner and thinner and thinner until it's a vacuum. That's ridiculous, right? It does get thinner and thinner due to temperature, due to different things, different to the atomic weight of the gases. Lighter gases go up higher. But how do we have a vacuum, a Tor 17 vacuum, next to a pressurized atmosphere without a container?
That violates the second law of thermodynamics.
Let's talk then. If you have a container with two chambers and a wall separating them, and one chamber is pressurized to atmospheric, whatever, pressure, 14.7 psi, and the other one is completely in vacuum. If you remove that separation, then both chambers the air from the pressurized chamber will rush into the volume of the vacuum chamber, and they will reach equilibrium pressure. I see what you're saying. So what you're saying is, how is it possible that we have an atmosphere in contact with a perfect or near perfect vacuum? I assume space is pretty near perfect vacuum.
Yeah, 10 to the minus 17 tall.
Yeah, let's call it. If you were to simulate that atmosphere on Earth, you would need a wall like 20 feet thick.
Exactly.
It's okay.
And I think that's the issue, is that in order to have a very high vacuum compartment separated from a pressurized compartment, you need a very thick, strong barrier. In his case, he's saying 20 feet, probably made out of metal. So that's the situation there. Okay, then electrostatic over gravity. Electrostatics, or Coulomb's law, better explains downward motion than atmospheric behavior or gravity. An electrostatic drone flies with no moving parts. The electrostatic force is 10 to the 36 times stronger than gravity per standard physics. MIT experiments, balloons with Van de Graaff generators demonstrate downward force linked to charge, not mass. Let me see if I have anything on gravity here. Yeah, let's look at minute 58 on that.
Forces that hold our world together. Talk about electrostatics. I want to show you a little experiment we did. So we had where is it? Quick. All right. So we had some leftover party balloons.
Yeah.
And we tied them to, there's just a button here, and it's about 2 inches off the floor, just neutrally buoyant. Now that wire goes to a Van de Graaff generator, right? Let me just pause this for a second. And on the flat Earth, we have a neutral or negative charged Earth, testable, measurable. And then the sky is positively charged. So we have, there are two Gaussian plates, our flat Earth and our positive charged sky. Anything in the air is surrounded by a positive charge, and if it's more dense than the air, it gives its downward direction by electrostatics. So right now we're going to test that theory. We're going to add a positive charge, and as soon as we do, this goes down. Now, did we just increase gravity, or do we increase the connection? We're discharging it, it goes up. We're increasing the connection. To the more positively high charge. If we take this tinfoil triangle and put a negative charge in it, it goes up. Turn it off, it goes down. Turn it on, it goes back up.
But that would be just, I'm assuming that's just simple electromagnetism or electrical charges repulsing and attracting each other.
It is. It is. It is. This is by MIT.
Yeah.
It's the silent drone. It's got no moving parts, and it's flying just on electrostatics. Now, are we defying gravity? Or are we defying electrostatics?
No, no, no. You're not defying it. It's just the electrostatic force is greater than the gravitational force.
Good, you're helping me make my point. So they tell us that the electrostatic charge is 10 to the third. This is global science, says the electrostatic charge is 10 to the 36 power stronger than gravity. No insult to you, because no human can even understand what 10 to the 36 is.
It's a big number.
Right? Yeah, so 10 to the 12th is a trillion, okay? Do you know how long 1 trillion seconds is, just to show you how big a trillion is? Take a guess.
I don't know, a few thousand, 10,000 years.
Very close. That's a good guess. 31,000 years, okay? So times 1,000 times 1,000 times 1,000, that's only 18 zeros, okay? Times 1,000 times... Yeah, so they're telling us that the electrostatic force that I just tested and proved and manipulated and scientifically experimented with is stronger than the unprovable, unscientific, unexperimental gravity that you're holding your religion to.
Okay, I think that's enough of that piece. Okay, so because the electrostatic force is so much stronger than gravity, it's a much more likely explanation, both for the downward forces that we experience, which we attribute to gravity, because we live in an electromagnetic universe, the ground being either neutral or negatively charged, and the sky or the firmament above being positively charged. And because of that, we do see voltage and current, in the form of things like lightning, as those things discharge. So let's go ahead and look at some more pieces here. Problems with Newtonian and Einsteinian gravity. Coulomb's law formula structure nearly identical to Newton's gravity law. Can't speak much to that. Gravity can't be observed or measured directly, only inferred via object's weight. Archimedes' principle and density used as alternate explanation for why things fall. And infinite gravitational vectors claimed, but no resolution to contradictions, like the sun holds Pluto but not the moon. So yeah, and this really leads us to the three-body problem. And I think this is one I hadn't heard of until I started following Dave Weiss, because he brought it up a lot, and he talks about it in this video. So we'll go there next. So the globe model can't mathematically simulate a solar system with 3 or more bodies using Newtonian gravity. Yet 80 plus objects orbit the sun perfectly without collision. So let's take a look at that. Going to minute 1:10:55.
Does it slow down and speed up and slow down?
Gravity acts along direct lines, meaning it's an action at distance force. So gravity always acts in a straight line.
You're familiar with the three-body problem. We got 3 bodies, and they're gravitationally being modeled here. And what happens is when you have 2 bodies, we can model it all day and night. Supercomputers can figure out what it's going to do. But add a third body, it goes into chaos mode, and no computer can figure out what it's going to do next. Now, we have all of our planets, all of our moons, and our sun in our solar system. I don't even know how many bodies there are, like 80 different bodies.
Or maybe more, yeah.
Maybe even more. But somehow,
I think it's 120.
Somehow they make perfect, they're a perfect clock. They never change. We had an alignment this last winter where all the planets were in a line. Wouldn't something tug something out of sync? Right? The 3-body problem is impossible, makes our solar system impossible, unless, of course, those lights we see in the sky are not what they tell us.
Oh, it's Einstein.
Yeah, so again, when you're simulating this using computer simulations and the formulas tied into gravity, and you're with just 2 bodies, everything works out fine. As soon as you add a third, what you saw in that simulation was the chaos that emerges within those 3 bodies. And each time you run the simulation, it's different. So you're getting one body, because it's a little bit closer to the other, pulling on it a little differently, and then the other one suddenly slingshots back and bumps into it, and it's chaos. It's chaotic. That's not how the universe actually works. So the math we have, the Newtonian physics that we describe in the heliocentric model, isn't what is actually what we see. What we see is a perfectly structured clock above our heads, with everything moving in exactly the same way year after year. whereas what we calculate using modern science's formula is chaos. And so no computer could actually model this appropriately. I think that's the point he's trying to make. Okay, let's go into the next topic, sun and angular size. So visual experiments, the sun retains its angular size through sunset, should shrink with distance if 93 million miles away. That is what I guess that's what the heliocentric model. The flatter sunset, the sun reduces in size and sets due to atmospheric occlusion and vanishing point, not because it dips behind a globe. And there's time-lapse sunset footage that shows consistent angular reduction, which contradicts globe theory. Let's see that at minute 1:14:30.
You mean its actual visual optical angular size does not change?
Yeah, on your globe, because you're not getting further away. You're getting actually 0.0004% further away from the sun. Therefore,
yeah, it should be negligible. There should be no change in the visual appearance of the sun. Correct.
Okay, so if I could show you more than 3 videos, me personally taking videos of the sun, a sunset with a solar filter, would that change your mind?
I don't know. Hit it. Let's see what You freaked me out a little with the mountains and the boats. So let's see what you got.
Okay, so according to the globe paradigm, the sun cannot change even 1%. But I've personally got upwards of 23%, and buddies of mine have got with the solar filter upwards of 40% change in the sun setting. Now, it doesn't look like it changes very much, but when you actually zoom into it and count the pixels, it does actually change quite drastically, especially this one. This is my 23% that's going right now. You can see it changes size. And this is with a solar filter, a pretty powerful solar filter, ND1 million. This one was a short one, but even this one changed size if you really zoom in.
But couldn't it just be atmospheric distortion? You know what I mean?
It would be magnifying. It would be magnifying on a flat Earth as the sun goes away. It is magnifying because it's going into more and more moisture, but it still gets smaller.
Well, if something goes further away, it should get smaller.
Right, but it is getting smaller, but it's also magnifying. And on certain conditions, if you watch the sun, it will just go away and get smaller and smaller. And it's not going down, it's going beyond, and it's going to just set beyond this cloud, this atmospheric horizon. It just gets smaller and smaller.
So you're proposing that the sun is not going up behind the horizon, it's simply disappearing from view based on perspective.
Exactly. Perspective and atmospheric occlusion.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly. So the sun, when it's going in a circuit above our heads in a relatively flat direction, further and further away, it's going to get smaller and smaller, as well as the light is going to have more and more trouble getting through all the occlusions, which are basically the atmosphere and everything that is in there. At some point, the light stops traveling, and then we end up with a dusk and then ultimately a night until the sun returns on the other side as it's doing a circuit, which is basically a large circle above our heads. Okay, so let me go ahead and move on to part 2 summary. The reason it's broken into part 1 and part 2 is because the transcript that I used, which is again the Clipto AI, produced something that was larger than the LLM I could enter in the prompt. So just split it into 2 parts. Okay, the moon and sun observations, optical illusions and perception. So it talks a bit about how the brain perceives large bodies like the moon differently. When you see the moon as it's coming up, as it's rising, it tends to look larger. But this is a little bit of an optical illusion. So Dave talks about that there. The nature of the sun and thermodynamics. Dave argues the sun cannot be a gas giant in a vacuum because it violates the second law of thermodynamics, namely, gas should expand into a vacuum. So how's the gas doing the opposite of expanding? Also, the idea of the sun's perpetual nuclear fusion is questioned. So how can it burn for billions of years without shrinking? If you actually think about it, they say the sun is this massive gas giant kind of star, and that's how stars are formed. But how do stars burn this fuel continuously without shrinking? Great question. They talk about the super coincidental data point that we get from NASA that the sun is 400 times further and 400 times larger. So it's a cosmic coincidence than the moon, yet they appear exactly the same size in our sky. The moonlight temperature claim is an interesting one. So this is something you should be able to test yourself under the right conditions where it's, let's say, a full moon, and you could take a highly accurate temperature gauge and record the temperature in the moonlight, and then take it under, let's say, a tree and record it in the moon shade, the shade of a tree preventing the moonlight. And the observation many, many times is that the moonlight is a cooler light. If it were reflecting off of, if the sunlight were reflecting off of a rock, and that's how the moon is lit, it's from the sun and not the moon, then just like when you're next to a tall building with glass and you feel the reflective sunlight, you're going to feel the heat of that light because the sun's light is a heating light. So the observation is that the moonlight is testably cooler. It's a cooling light. Let me see if there's a clip there that's worth showing. And there's another point here about the hotspot, which I might want to bring into play at minute 25 first. So let's look for that.
Just even if you knew nothing of science, that it would not create a single hotspot. It's
the sun rays, because the sun's so far away, the rays come in parallel, correct?
To the Earth? Yeah, for sure, because it's 93 million.
But why do they always look like this? Why do they always look crepuscular?
Sorry, could you? I understand where you guys are going with this, but then what is the solution then for where exactly the placement of the sun is if it's not 93 miles?
So we're just looking at evidence, and the sun that we see is in an apparent position. Matthew, if you and I were standing at the beach, and Angel, we're all 100 yards apart, and we're watching the sunset, you're going to see the sun walking on the water, that beam of light on the water right to your feet.
Sure.
I'm going to see mine, and Angel's going to see his, but we won't see each other's. We'll all see the sun in a different position. We all have a personal relationship with the sun.
Yeah, I've seen those little angled rays when I'm driving on the highway. You can see it looks like it's right above the clouds.
You never see this. This is what it would.
You should see that.
This is what you should, but you don't. Welcome to Flat Earth.
Yeah, but wait, hang on a second. But couldn't that just be the way the cloud, like it could be when the light comes down parallel, the clouds could be just simply, clouds can take various shapes. It could just be deflecting the light sideways, Can
you see my screen? So on screen, I've got what the globe paradigm claims is that it's like train tracks converging. Now, the problem with that is the train tracks are coming towards you. For a train track to converge like that, it has to be coming towards you. Okay. Now, when we have vertical lines going up, like those, the Chicago skyline I showed you earlier, that's not diverging, right? These crepuscular rays are not coming towards our eyes. Therefore, perspective is not in play, but they're still diverging, proving that they are actually crepuscular.
Right. If you look at this picture right here, stop sharing for a second, Angel. So we got the sun, the rays are coming out. Now, these rays going into the distance, they're still diverging, but they're going farther away from us. So perspective is trying to bring them together, but they're diverging so much that we can still see that they're diverging, right? So we have diverging rays here. That points to a very, very local light. And again, Angel and I, we don't know what the sun is. We don't know what the moon is, but we know what it's not. The moon is not a dusty, dirty rock we
Okay, so that was the crepuscular rays that I think is worth noting. Okay, now they get into the cooler light, I believe, here.
Reflecting sunlight, right? The moonlight is actually colder light. The moonlight, when you magnify it, is colder.
Wasn't there a song about that?
Probably.
Cold moonlight, something about
so
that.
The moon, and on a full moon night, it's usually colder than not.
Whoa. So what you're saying is that an object under moonlight
is colder than under moon shade.
Colder than an object in total darkness?
Tons of experiments done showing that.
Well, that should be easy to experiment. You just need one of those thermometers.
We've done it. Done 100 times. And by the way, there's 100 ways to do it to get a false reading. Some people will like put a piece of cardboard to shade the ground, but that's now insulating the ground. That's not fair. You can't do that.
Well, I have one of those thermometers. I should give that a shot.
You can do it where you have the moonlight, let's say it's on the pavement, and then there's a vertical fence not insulating the ground, and there's a shady spot. Then you can do it, and you'll see a dramatic difference.
Well, anything under moonlight should be a.
Yep, so that's another experiment we can run ourselves. Let's get into the fake space arguments. So the claims are made that satellites, especially small ones like Starlink, cannot be seen with the naked eye, challenging reports of visible Starlink trains. We talked about that in the last video. Satellite visibility and physics are disputed. If a 747 can't be seen at 7 miles up, how can a satellite at 350 miles up be seen? And then there's this notion of the ISS footage and its anomalies. There's a number of claims of green screen glitches, harness mishaps, disappearing astronauts presented. This is because of, NASA having studios to make a lot of the video that is being presented as outer space video. They also have pools where they do a lot of their training. And there's been claims of seeing bubbles in space and actual video footage of ISS footage. Also, there's when presenting the Earth looking down from the ISS as it's traveling, sometimes you'll see artifacts in the Earth. You'll see glitches there. You'll see stitched together video that doesn't look contiguous, or there's some kind of a point where they took two pieces and stitched them together of different videos from different angles, things like that. So we can look for a couple of different, it talks about AR. So that's augmented reality. And there's equipment out there like Microsoft HoloLens that they're most likely using. So as they're kind of interacting with the environment, they're showing it in a way that it looks like objects are moving, but it's actually AR generated virtual objects. And then sometimes you'll see glitches and artifacts in those videos. So we'll look for a few of those here in a second. Let's look at satellites first at 138.
Maybe
they're local. They're not far. They're not far away.
Drones.
Yes. Don't know. Not sure. But they're not satellites because, as you pointed out, the Starlink size is smaller than a 747's engine, way smaller, right? So here's a 747. You can barely make out the shape of the plane when you're looking at it, but you can't see the engines. The plane's only 5 to 7 miles up.
And why are the satellites illuminated? Why do you need illumination on satellites?
Well, that's reflecting sunlight, they tell us.
They say it's the sun. Yeah, the sun's hitting it.
If this is 7 miles high, if I made it double the height, you couldn't see the airplane, right? But the satellites, these tiny little satellites.
Yeah, so I think that's a good point on the satellites. Let's look at the ISS at 140.30.
If you go look at the trajectory of the ISS, it perfectly matches a ring magnet ferrocell. So it does a perfect spiral of pattern, and it never goes over the poles again. So
you acknowledge the ISS exists?
No.
I admit that there's got something up there. It's not in a second law of thermodynamics violation. There's no people on it.
So I have an ISS tracker years ago before I was a flat earther. There's, oh my God, the ISS is going to go right over me here in Connecticut if I live in Connecticut. And right on cue, it showed up on the horizon and I watched it. It went right over me. So when it was over me, that's as close as it's going to get to me. Would you agree? Straight line up. Right? Because when it's on the horizon, it's farther away.
Yeah.
So it's 250 miles directly above me. Now I could see it for another, I think it was 4 or 5 minutes, 17,000 miles an hour. Times 4 or 5 minutes. What's that come out to? It was like 3,000 miles away. I could still see it when it's over California.
That's actually a really good point. So the idea that we have satellites that are moving above our heads, the ISS in particular is going 17,000 plus miles an hour, according to NASA, as it moves above our heads. And there are times when you can actually see the ISS in the sky and you can use a tracker to identify the ISS's location. And if you happen to be in that location, you can look up and actually see the ISS. I have seen satellites myself from Starlink. I don't know if I've seen the ISS. I might have once or twice. I have friends who've seen it. And if you actually think about the amount of distance it's traveling and the time that you're seeing it, it's not possible. The math doesn't check out, right? So if it's going 17,000 miles an hour, and you can see it visible by the naked eye for 4 minutes, right? We'll do some math on that later, but it's basically 4 minutes into 60 minutes is that fraction of the hour. And if it's going that many miles in an hour, you can say, here's how many miles it traveled. It sounds like it's somewhere in the thousands. So you're seeing something that is relatively small. Maybe it's the size of a football field. It's supposed to be 300, let's say, miles high or whatever it is in altitude, which in and of itself, it would be hard to see that. It should be uh, low enough to Earth where it's not reflecting sunlight, and it's moving at such a fast clip that it should be completely out of sight and invisible to you. Yet you see it for 4 solid minutes all lit up as if the sun is supposedly lighting it. So that's clearly some kind of a hoax. That's not what they say it is. See if I want to continue on this clip.
The same size as a 747. How could I possibly see it 3,000 miles away?
No.
Okay, I did though. Therefore, what I'm seeing isn't that big, isn't going that fast. It's fake. Now, we had NASA whistleblowers, but again, it's all hearsay.
So what is it then?
Yeah, what is it? That's a good question. Okay, let's continue through some of these other topics. Okay, there's actually some fake space footage here as well. Let me get into that.
Don't verify Narnia. If I was to show you a live feed of me in Narnia, would you believe in Narnia?
No. We all know that Hollywood has the technology. We've seen movies like Gravity and Interstellar. They're phenomenal. They look perfect. So there's no question that any of this can be doctored. We know that.
Do you remember this spacewalk? So you got this guy out here. They're going 17,500 miles an hour, and he goes away with his little jetpack, and he comes back. So a couple years later, they did another one, and hold on.
Yeah, but his initial velocity was the same as the spacecraft. So
no, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah.
So there's the first one. And then the second one that they show us, and they only show us a picture, you can't even tell the difference. It's just the Earth change. It's the exact same pose, the exact same thing. And when I look at them side by side and I zoom in, it's the exact same image. So again...
Well, in all fairness, they're probably using the same spacesuit, so...
I'm just saying...
Yeah, it does look like it's a cut and paste, yeah.
It is a cut and paste, right? So... I want to just show you
What did Elon Musk say when he launched the Tesla Roadster in space? He says you can tell it's real because it looks so fake.
Yeah, you can tell I'm really not in space because I look just as good as the astronauts right now. I'm floating on the space station.
I remember him saying that. I'm like, what? All right, what do we got here? Is that the ISS or is that?
I'm on the ISS. I'm on the ISS. Come on. I'm holding on with my feet so I don't float away.
Okay, but that looks fake. You look fake.
Well, it is fake. It all looks fake. But here,
yeah.
What about this? Check this out. This was a live feed, and the guy just appeared out of nowhere.
Hey, that looks green screen then.
No, well, that does. This was a live feed, and it happened.
Maybe a glitch. Maybe it was just a glitch.
A glitch. Explain where he came from, unless they're using multi-layered technology.
Well, maybe they got a Star Trek transporter.
Right, here's this guy faded out. Same There you go. Right, and then
are these legit ISS videos?
These are again. This is from an ISS live feed. Look at this line. What is this line here?
Wow, that's a real cloudy day on Earth.
But look, that's what they show all the time. Cloudy days on Earth. But where is this line?
Stitched photography.
It's stitched, right? So they're not showing us a lot.
But they have to do that sometimes, don't they?
Well, why would they? They're flying over the Earth, point the camera down, and live feed us.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
This is very suspicious, guys. Very suspicious.
I'm just gonna hit a couple more, and then Anthony's not Anthony. Angel's got some things. So a lot of times when they're doing these clips here, sometimes they're hanging by wires. And sometimes they're in a pool. If the spacewalks are in pools, sometimes it's green.
Oh, they're not in pools here. They're obviously not in a.
This is not pool. This is hanging by wire. But it's a little hard to see. You can see. Look right here. You can see the wire pull from his shirt.
Hey, there it is. His little harness.
Yeah. And there's some of the others that are way clearer. But I want to just show you a couple things. Right. This is they had their Christmas hats, and that was in 1999, but then in 2023, gravity didn't apply. Their hats became anti-gravity.
Well, the little top of the hat shouldn't float up automatically. It doesn't.
Well, why are they all down?
Well, yeah.
And why are they all up? Why are they all down?
And why do the women use hairspray?
Why are they all up down? Why are they all up? Hold on, there's one more I wanna just.
Is this on the ISS?
This is on the ISS.
They have nothing better to do than this?
Well, right, and other things, right? So they had a little green screen glitch where everything orange turned blue and everything blue turned orange. All right, that just shows again that they're using technology. Here's Kamala Harris talking with the ISS, and let me just.
I can't even get cell service in my basement.
Look at this wire going right through their hand. They're always playing with something. This is called augmented reality.
So this is like some kind of VR glass?
Yeah, so lots of video footage from the live feeds and various feeds of the ISS where there's glitches. No, you could make an argument, obviously, that there's glitches in all kinds of digital recording systems, but the augmented reality ones are pretty glaring. And yeah, the use of green screens and some of these other things. The harnesses, I think, are a big one. Seeing cables and then just seeing these inconsistencies, right? Why would the hats all be up and all be down in different photos? In one case, I guess they didn't bother to try to simulate the zero gravity kind of environment, right? And the other they did. Okay, so let's look at celestial motion and star trails. Key challenges raised. Why do star trails form perfect circles from the ISS if the station is hurtling sideways at 17,000 miles an hour? That's a really good question. On a globe, stars should appear as streaks. The group claims these clean circles disprove Earth's motion and suggest fixed heavens. And then there's a comment here about the Georgia Guidestone. So I had mentioned stellar alignment in archaeological sites, and this is just one example. I think since the 80s, the Georgia Guidestones were aligned to Polaris, and over that period of time, we should have seen precession. We should have seen Polaris shifting over from where it is to some other location. But in many years, we don't see any of that, right? It's in the exact same spot each year after year, over decades and even centuries. So let's see if there is a video that we can pull in for that.
What we see from the Earth, according to the globe paradigm.
So wait a minute. So the Georgia Guidestones had a little hole in it that point to Polaris, right?
Yes.
Okay, how does that prove flat Earth?
Well, if that Polaris never shifts positions in there and the stars actually do perfect circles, it proves we're not moving. It proves the stars are moving.
But Polaris does shift position through the ages.
Angel, stop swearing for a second. Stop swearing. So this is the Georgia Guidestones. Here's the hole he's talking about. It's like the thickness of a straw. You look through and Polaris is there. Polaris takes a tiny little circle every year. You can see it
Sure.
take a tiny little circle. Or is it every day? Every day it takes a tiny little circle.
Yeah.
Right. So they tell us that we're so far away from Polaris, 433 light years. Again, we can still see it. Impossible.
Yeah, it seems weird, yeah.
That our 4.4 billion miles a year of lateral motion chasing the sun over thousands of years doesn't change, right? But because it's so far away, there's no parallax. Again, that's crazy. But the Earth also wobbles, and it wobbles 1 degree every 76 years. Okay, that's got a 26,000 year cycle. 1 degree in the sky is equivalent to 3 full moons side by side. That's 1 degree is 3 full moons. Georgia Guidestones were built in 1981. They were up for over 40 years, right? It would have wobbled over a half a degree. The Polaris would have been far outside of that hole. It would have been far outside that hole. So we started making videos about it. They started going viral, and then bam. Georgia Guidestones exploded, blew up. Terrorists blew them up. 3 hours later, the bulldozers were there. They took it all away and stole the time capsule, and no investigation.
Get rid of the evidence, eh? Well,
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. When there's evidence of a deception, and people find out about it, obviously it's time to clean it up. Okay, let's look at rocket launches in Newtonian physics. So, rocket thrust in a vacuum, this is a topic that came up, and I've heard this a few times. I think it's actually very compelling evidence that we're not sending rockets through space. So, Angel presents a video experiment showing ionic propulsion fails in a vacuum chamber, concluding that rockets can't work in space because they can't push off of anything. Newton's third law is debated. And Matthew defends the physics of rockets expelling mass, which pushes back on the rocket body. Let's see if we can find a clip from that.
If I start doing this on the skateboard, I'll push the back of my head. I'm not going to move anywhere, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, what's the rocket pushing off in a vacuum?
What's it steering with?
The burning of the fuel. Well, the burning of what's happening is the burning of the fuel. Let's just say the explosion from the fuel. It's going in every direction, but in the direction downwards, there's nothing there. So the thrust doesn't actually push down. The thrust actually pushes up. So in the combustion chamber, the explosion goes in every direction, but the only direction that has something to push back on it is above it. So what happens is the thrust pushes up and then the rocket pushes back. So that would be how.
Okay.
Yeah, that's basic third.
It's pushing it's pushing off itself.
Correct. Yeah. But this is like if you were on a skateboard, like if you were sitting or even in one of those chairs like I'm sitting on now that have wheels, and you held the bowling ball and you threw the bowling ball would go in one direction, you would go in the other because you're pushing off the inertia of the ball.
Let me get here. Exactly. So the mass of the ball is now object B. In a vacuum, there's still no object B.
No.
Yes, that's true. There's no object B. Let's jump into the next part of this conversation.
So that's the velocity,
the velocity of the thrust. This fence doesn't move. Now watch right here. It's going to go up and then it's going to come back down. 4 million pounds up and then back down. Right? It did a little bobble, right? Where this thrust should send these clouds for miles, right? But this thing is just going up. Now, it goes up in this. Now, I don't have the sound on this, and you can just look Space Shuttle launch. You'll get this. When the solid rocket boosters deploy, they're 35 miles downstream, and you hear it at the exact same time that you see it. You hear it at the exact same time you see it in the video.
No, you can't. That can't be.
Well, but in the video, just look Space Shuttle launch. You'll find this video, and right here, when it goes, you hear it and see it at the exact same time. It should be over 90-second delay.
Yeah, that's another argument that Dave's making here. I'm going to continue down this a little further. I think there's another conversation about ionic propulsion in this vacuum.
This is what is this?
Okay, so this is ionic propulsion, okay? So it's got a little spindle and it's got two crafts that are basically pushing off the air, okay? Now he puts this basically in a vacuum chamber and it has air in it now. So what he's going to do is he's going to suck all the air out. You can see on the gauge there, the air's going lower and lower. And when it reaches a vacuum, a really good vacuum in there, it starts to stop. It doesn't have any air to push off anymore. And you can see it eventually completely stops. It's just running off the motion it had now, and then it will eventually completely stop.
What's the mechanism of propulsion you said?
Ionic propulsion.
So what is it doing? It's shooting electrons out of the
shooting ions out. Ions, yeah.
Well, ions are okay. All right, yeah.
So now what he's going to do is he's going to reintroduce air into the tank, and then it's going to start up again. It's going to start pushing off the air again, right? So now you can clearly see it doesn't have any air to push off, and it's completely stopped. So this debunks, even if we grant you the vacuum, space travel is fake. It can't happen. It's impossible.
Yeah, very interesting. So once you create a vacuum, the ionic propulsion ceases to work because there's nothing to push off against, and therefore you're not getting any propulsion. So it's more about when you're pushing off of something, you have the ability to propel forward, which is what we see at the Earth level, obviously. Okay, so beyond that, SpaceX and shuttle launches, Dave critiques SpaceX's Starship footage, claiming inconsistent edits and CGI smoke effects. NASA shuttle launches also critiqued. That point about the rocket boosters being visible and audible at the same time, even though it's 35 miles, that's quite a distance for sound to travel. So that seems to imply it was much more local, or that was just a fake sound effect that they were using. And alleged evidence presented of balloon recovery. So I talked about balloons being used significantly in satellite communications these days. So there's a bit more in here, I think, kind of summarizing some of the main points. Philosophical and theological implications. One is the grand deception. Dave concludes that the globe model is a mind prison and a way to disconnect people from their divine nature. Yeah, that definitely seems to be the case, is that when you're trapped into the idea of the heliocentric model, you are more disconnected, more distant from God, just because of the separation, the distance, and also this idea that maybe there is a God, maybe there isn't. This idea of a free energy is interesting. The more that we study some of the ancient understanding and ideas of the ether, and how potentially some of the buildings were able to get energy from the ether using a Quicksilver Mercury engine. That was another thing that has come up in some of the research that I've been doing with other researchers. References made to Genesis 1, where God separates waters from waters. We covered that in a lot of detail. Obviously, this cosmology was known by ancient cultures, including obviously the Hebrews. And yes, there is likely a deception here to remove acknowledgement of the Creator. So Matthew the physicist has, in a couple interesting times in reactions that he has throughout, where he says, well, that's impossible and that doesn't make any sense with this existing model. He doesn't actually come out and say, I've been convinced, and yes, this flat stationary level plane Earth concept is something he buys into. He does recommend additional experimentation. He'd like to run some tests himself, and including things that are easily testable, like those longer range photos, possibly using lasers, and obviously being able to record the temperature of the moonlight. Those are some of the kinds of things that are easy to do. And that they'll probably have an additional conversation as follow-up at some point in the future. So some of the holistic summaries of themes and takeaways: nature of celestial bodies. The sun, moon are small, local, and unknown in composition. My, again, personal feeling is that they are made of some form of plasma. The sun being a generating light, a positively charged light, and the moon being a negatively charged light, which has a cooling effect. Satellites in the ISS are local, not in space. And these are evidence of fakery. I think there's a lot of different ways that space can be faked. Obviously, there is swimming pools, there's green screens, there's studios that can create a lot of video footage with people in it. Then there's obviously going to be CGI, where there's a lot of cuts and edits in terms of launches, like the SpaceX launches being a good example of that. And there are questions that remain about the consistency in physics and vacuum combustion that we just talked about. Visual perception challenges, the optical illusions that mislead us about size, distance, and shape, or things disappearing over a curve when in fact we can zoom right back in and there is no curve that's provable there. The NASA footage, there's tons and tons of green screen glitches and other AR prop glitches and cable problems. We talked last time about the moon landing and some of the fakery there, obviously from a much earlier period. And today we have much greater ability to create high quality, high def video that looks realistic. And we have AI And yeah, there's a lot of potential to make things look more real. And obviously, we see a ton of movies these days that are, you know, set in space, that are science fiction based. And if they look that real and lifelike, or even video games, then we can make space look real as well, using similar tools and techniques. And the main motive that we're suggesting is that the creator of all things, and I open with this in Romans 1, the creator of all things, we know him through his creation, and the suppressing of knowledge of the creation is in part a effort to suppress the creator himself. And this is what obviously atheism is going to assert in scientific institutions that depend on this heliocentric globe religion need in order to keep that assertion going forward. So the debate summary between these groups, I thought it was a really healthy conversation. At no point was there any animosity or mockery or making fun on either side. For the most part, it was just a good conversation, and a lot of the claims of a lot of the model challenges that the globe has, most of the time people just accept and they don't really think about, and they aren't presented this alternative model. They aren't presented what the challenges are with their model, and as a result they just accept the model and they kind of go on with life. When presented with these challenges, you'll notice someone who, you know, is a physicist and teaches physics and has a number of degrees really struggles to explain what he's being presented with. And I think that is a challenge for all of modern science, math, and physics, is that when presented with these challenges, it doesn't really have a good explanation for them. Some of the core themes and claims are visual illusions and perception issues, right? So the moon and sun sizes on the horizon appear larger. This is a illusion and not physical size. Perspective tricks reveal how human vision misinterprets scale. The nature of the sun and moon, the claim is the sun is not a giant ball of gas. Its properties violate thermodynamics in a vacuum. The challenge is, how can hydrogen and helium remain clustered and burn in a vacuum? And the moonlight experiments show that objects are colder than in the shade. There are optical proofs of proximity. The crepuscular rays, where we see the divergent sun rays, suggest a close and local sun and not a very far distant sun. And that's also true of moonlight, I've seen as well. Also, there's local lighting and kind of a hot spot when you look at the sun and moon, when you see the reflection off the Earth from a high altitude, like, for example, a weather balloon with a camera. So it really implies that there's more proximity of these bodies, these celestial bodies. And of course, they are the same apparent size, which is claimed to be a cosmic coincidence. Suspicions of NASA in fake space. The Starlink satellites are allegedly visible with the naked eye. This contradicts what's possible given their speed, given their size, given their altitude, and given their the time of day, and supposedly reflecting sunlight. We should not be able to see them. The spacewalk footage, we've seen a lot of these glitches, claims of identical reused footage, yes, and augmented reality props and camera glitches, rocket launches in physics. So yeah, Musk's Starship footage, we didn't actually look at that. It's in the video, so you can go in and watch that. You've probably seen these launches before, but if you look closely at the thrust and just the footage itself, it just doesn't look at all realistic. You know, the smoke behavior, the soft landings that they're having, it all just looks very CGI, video gamey. Newton's third law allegedly violated in vacuum propulsion. We talked a lot about vacuum propulsion, ionic propulsion experiment stopped at a vacuum. The idea of stars in Polaris in particular being fixed and observable in the same exact point in the sky year after year over many years. And that is partially was seen by the Georgia Guidestones. The star trails we didn't talk about from the ISS. I didn't have that clip. I did mention it. Okay, in the closing summary, why the lie argument, motivations behind the supposed cover-up. These are, of course, speculations, but NASA does have a big budget. That the biblical cosmological model exposes spiritual truths, that humans are in the center of creation, that we're special, created beings, and that that God loves us and He's right above our heads. The global model could be considered a deception of the mind, and in part to hide some of the characteristics of our realm, which includes free energy. The possibility of hidden lands, I'm not sure if I believe that necessarily. I do think there could be more land, but possibly above in the firmaments and possibly below, but most likely not outside of the realm of the circle. It's hard to know how big the circle is. I guess that's part of the challenge. So we've talked a lot about Genesis 1, the claims that, yeah, if everyone knew where they lived, they would be a lot closer to the Creator, and they would be more likely to walk in more peaceful ways with each other. Calls to action, encouragement to experiment independently, and yes, there's experiments you can run yourself. So this is something that I would encourage you to test. Go to the shore, bring a Nikon P900 or 1000 camera, and zoom into things that are going over the curve. That's easy enough to do. If I have a chance, I might get my hands on a temperature gauge and try to test the moon temperature myself. And then here's some, this is just a infographic that ChatGPT created to kind of summarize a lot of these things. Okay. So I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. I'm going to go ahead and end this video today. Appreciate you taking some time to listen. If you did make it to the end of this video, apologies for all the edits I had to do because of the monetization of that video. You'll notice there's a little explanation of it says Flat Earth Wikipedia right there on YouTube, and that this is an archaic and scientifically disproven conception of the Earth shape as a planar disk. Many ancient cultures, notably in the ancient Near East, subscribed to a flat Earth cosmography. The model has undergone a recent resurgence as a conspiracy theory in the 21st century. So that is what appears at the bottom of the video. And I think as a result of that, it is they're throwing in ads every few minutes, and in an effort to quote unquote monetize the video. But I think it's more to do with just making it less watchable because they want to, deprioritize the watching or make it less attractive for people to watch the video. Okay, so hopefully you got something out of this. There's a lot of repetition in the Above the Dome series. I'm going to continue and do one video per, or one review video per each of those different videos that I've analyzed in the article. So we've got a few more to go. All right, Saul DePaul signing off. Thanks for joining me from Remnant Radio Ministries. Take care.